I'm Maureen Ballatori, and this is Spilled Salt, a podcast on the thrills and spills from the food, beverage, and agriculture industries. Today's guest is Paul Mabray. He's the CEO of Pour Now, which is the quickest route between you and your favorite drink. They have over 30,000 plus retailers and millions of bottles of wine that are just one click away. The Pour Now platform is here to bridge the gap between marketing work and actual sales, whether that's online, in stores, big box retailers, or independent shops. I can't tell you how much of a challenge that problem actually is. And Paul knows that very well. He talks a lot today about his career trajectory leading up to why he wanted to create Pour Now and how he knew it was solving a big problem. But as a marketer, I know that real world how much that is affecting the Alc Bev clients that we work with as well. Pour Now is not a bunch of technologists who are inventing solutions from the outside. They have been in the trenches, working harvests, dragging hoses through cellars, bags through restaurants, and wineries through digital transformations. If you're in the business, like I mentioned, you know how hard it is to track those sales and attribute them to marketing efforts all the way through the purchase. Pour Now is offering a solution to track those sales in a big way. We'll hear from Paul today just about how they do that. Enjoy the conversation. Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm good, Maureen. It's sunny in California and my vitamin D is coming in nicely.
So glad to hear it. We're finally starting to get some sunshine here in upstate New York. And I was teaching my kids the other day, this is fake spring, so don't get too excited. The cold will be back, I'm sure, but glad to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, my daughter's learning about the New York winters. It's her first real winter there. She's at Barnard at Columbia. So she's really rising sophomore. And actually, it's her second winter. But yeah, she's like, wow, this was a tough one.
It's a lesson in resilience. You know, it really makes you look forward to those sunny summer days. So
exactly.
That's great.
Exactly.
Well, I always like to start this in the beginning. So take me all the way back to the very early days. I'd love to get an understanding of your background and how you got started in the wine industry, or even before that. Where were your early career interests?
Yeah. So I started out actually an entrepreneur on accident, middle-class family. And I paid for college starting a comic book shop of all things. We used to sell $100,000 worth of comic books from this little store in Napa. And that's when a comic book was $1. So you think about that.
Wow.
It was a pretty interesting story. And, it was a subscription program that we did where we picked out the right comics for the collectors. And then I went down to college in LA, and a guy named John Wright, who founded Domain Chandon USA, hired me as a sales rep. And I'm a terrible, terrible salesman, but I'm a nerd. So I wrote my own kind of CRM program, and it really sales is about paying attention. So it was like, who's, the children's names, what do they like, flowers versus cigars, how often did I call them, what was the last thing? So it would every day print me out a call list of who I had to call. And that's how I grew my sales. They hockey sticked. I realized I no longer want, as much as I wanted to be a director, writer, and film, I was making great money, and he promoted me to vice president when I was way too young. And then I came to Northern California in my hubris, being a youthful, arrogant young man. I thought I was going to be CEO by the time I was 24, and moved over and worked for Francis Ford Coppola's winery because I wanted to get back to my film roots.
Cool.
And I reported directly to the CEO, Earl Martin, who's still a great friend and a great guy. I was kind of like a skunkworks guy. So my job was to do all these crazy projects that he assigned me, everything from he had me do Northern California sales, to the compliance, to the ERP system, to the food line. And then the one that he gave me at the end that I got famous for there was, he said, look, we need to do a wine club. And what you probably don't remember is back in the mid 90s, the person that started Wine Club became Quasimodo very quickly in a winery. Because in the 90s, mostly people that came to work in tasting rooms were retirees who just wanted to enjoy conversation and pour wine. And wine clubs were metric based. How many client-ups did you sign up? It was really a sales job, not a hospitality job. And I remember crying to him. I'm like, I don't want to do this. because I knew how much they were hated in the tasting room, and
Yeah.
still made me do it. And it was an amazing journey. He was a data-driven guy, so we drove up and down the valley and got all the tasting, the brochures, and we put a spreadsheet together of what they were, and made a club that was entirely different than all of those clubs, at different amenities. And we went from 0 to 3,000 wine club members in 6 months.
And so that was winery agnostic. You had a bunch of wineries that you were selling.
No, I was at Nivam Coppola's winery. It was just Nivam Coppola's winery.
I see.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so obviously, and we put together, it was almost like if you imagine Plated and Netflix together. So it had a food line. Francis Coppola had food line. It had American Zoetrope as magazine. It had a film in it. It had the wine, and you get a package and all those things that put it together. It was like kind of an eat like, drink like Francis.
Oh, cool.
So it's super cool of a package. And, what was interesting is then I got to bring my nerd back in, because it was so technologically deficient. I can't believe it wasn't that long ago, but feels forever ago. They had library cards that they'd write the wine club numbers and the credit cards on, and they'd hand key the credit cards.
Oh my God.
And it would take 4.5 weeks to go through the entire list of people, and they'd have to start again. So
yeah,
we felt that was terribly inefficient. So we hired the guy that wrote SQL for Dummies to write the first ever wine club processing software. And we processed that club in 72 hours, which felt like lightning speed. Now it's slow by today's standards, but that was a big deal for us. And then I went off to be a .communist with everyone else. I joined wineshopper.com, which was funded by Kleiner Perkins and Jeff Bezos from Amazon. I met Jeff Bezos a couple times. And it was who was going to be the head of wine for the internet. It was Virtual Vineyards versus Wine Shopper. And I have so many stories about that. And then they ended up merging together and failing together. Actually, it was a culture story.
Wow.
And then after that, I become the entrepreneur in the wine industry, starting first with Wine Direct, which was the Shopify for wine. I founded that in 2002 and was CEO. I raised $17 million for that. Ran that for 7.5 years. And then I left there. I started a company called Vintink, which was a social CRM company. Think like Radiant6 plus Hootsuite. And that became the largest software solution in the wine industry. It was like 4,000 wineries at the time. Sold that to a big agency called W2O. I ran their tech department for a couple of years. They sold that software to another restaurant middleware software, because candidly, I wanted to get away from wine at that time. I was very tired.
And when was that? What year-ish was that?
I think it was like 2014, I think.
Okay.
I don't know exactly. I'm kind of time blind. I think that's part of my wife says that at least to me. So yeah, it was a great adventure, but I really wanted to get away from wine, because I'd been selling to wineries, and I'd found that software selling to wineries over 7 years to be very fatiguing, or 14 years almost to be fatiguing.
Yeah.
Because, they don't have a lot of budget. You're teaching them very advanced, technology, and it wears on your soul.
Yeah.
You're like, Vintink was, I think, $35 a month, and people are like, "Oh, that's expensive." And you walk through a tasting room and they spend a couple $100,000, and you're like, "This is just killing me." This decision.
I want to talk more about that, the perception that a winery has about cost and where they'll spend and where they won't. But before we go there, I want to go back to something that you said early on. You said you were kind of an accidental entrepreneur. And so, but it also sounds like you're a natural leader, which is something that, of course, is required for being a successful entrepreneur, is the ability to lead teams. And it sounds like you did that in everything that you just walked through and explained.
Yeah, I think, going to film school is an interesting part of that. So, film is managed chaos. I mean, you're going in the day, you have an expectation of what your shot's supposed to look like, and it gets cloudy, or your actors come in hungover, or this suit doesn't fit somebody. I mean, it's managed chaos all the time. A startup is exactly that. It's managed chaos, and you're tuning your way through that as you learn all the skill sets. I think that those leadership capabilities get better and better as you tune them over time, and you're still caught off guard. I have this CEO kind of like a pamphlet, because I've been a lot of board of directors and board of advisors I give every CEO. And one of the things I tell every CEO is, look, we're all making it up. And I mean that in not the negative way. I mean, even if I had the exact same team doing another product 10 years in the future, the time the
Yeah.
product, the team, that where they are in their life, everything is changing. So it's never going to be the same replication. So CEOs are like, we're pattern matching and trying to find the right patterns and frameworks that we know work, and trying to find that within that team's structure and looking for patterns as fast as possible. And you can't catch all of them, but you're trying to find that pattern matching where success should go and what the prioritization of a sequence is.
Right.
That's the key.
Right. Yeah. And almost being able to, it's really about being able to zoom out, right?
Yes.
And see how it's all playing out in the moment, and, sort of thinking through the various avenues of what you could take if you do this versus that. So when we think about that sort of mindset, and even going back to what you mentioned about like a reluctance of wineries to invest and conservative budgets and that sort of thing, talk more about that. Like what are some of the things that you experienced?
Yeah. So look, this is a huge, for me, one of the things, I love wine, but the passion about the wine industry has changed from, again, hubris, trying to be like the Mondavi of the wine industry, to these are my neighbors and friends and family around the world. And this digital, wave is coming, and digital Darwinism is a real thing. It's something that drives that. And so this has been an anthropological journey about understanding what makes a winery tick in the different ways. And, part of that is we as a culture are risk averse. It's just baked into who we are. We have one swing at the plate once a year. If we miss it with our wine, that's it. But it's baked even deeper into that. So if you think the majority of wineries are, boutique wineries, constrained by the land or the grapes that they've contracted, they also, the money they have is constrained, meaning that like even if marketing's goals oftentimes drives growth, but in this case, they can't drive growth because they're constrained by how much land they have, how much use. And it's already, the next year's in the vintage is already in a barrel or bottle, and it goes on for a couple of years even. So my wife runs a direct winery in Carneros called Donham. Even if she has a runaway hit and she gets 100 points on a wine, she can't make more of it. It's already, the next vintage is there. So it's like, she can only take a little bit of price. That marketing budget is a finite. And so as a result, the risk aversion follows into, they'd rather do something that works marginally than something that may not work at all. That's kind of the part of it. So that includes marketing spend, that includes technological decisions, and that's the baked in part of the industry. And that feeds even into the larger wineries, because they oftentimes behave like that as well.
Yeah, I love that idea of the safety of the thinking of something that works marginally rather than not at all, right? I grew up on a dairy farm. I get it in the way that only a farmer or someone who works with farmers can understand,
Right.
Is that the industry that you're in, the work that you're doing is a risk in and of itself. And so it's all about mitigated risk. But on the flip side of it, that concept of what if you get 100-point wine, you can't make more of that. Sure. But that is contributing to brand building and what you can do, in the bigger picture downstream from that success.
Well, again, this is like a Rubik's Cube. So I agree with you 100%. But remember, until just recently, we've had decades of success.
True.
So, it's either been growth, or it was growth and revenue, and then it was revenue and not growth. And now we are in a perfect storm of that. So that has led to a type of apathy, like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So why should I invest in this infrastructure when people are coming and buying my product? And that's, these are all part of this complicated Rubik's Cube of understanding the psychology of this industry. And that's a key component of it. And if you think about wine, okay, so wholesale did great until like 2009. You could do almost no wrong until the first kind of recession. And then boutique wineries, as they got delisted from wholesalers, leaned heavy duty into direct to consumer, right? Which is, most valleys, with few exceptions, fill up with tourists all the time. And so success was guaranteed there.
Yep.
And then as that contracted, COVID hits, and then now those are changing, and there's so many wineries in Napa. It's 700 wineries. You can taste 2 wineries a day and barely get through them in a year. And by the time you get through, there's a whole new set of wineries at the other time to keep going. And you're competing against different things now than just, hey, here they come, put out a sign and they show up at our door. And that's causing this new interpretation. And then we've overlooked the actual answer. And this is what I've been very adamant talking about, which is great. We have this wine. If you look at almost every winery, most of their direct consumer sales are within a 90-mile radius of their winery.
Mm-hmm.
It's a proximity sale.
Makes sense.
In Napa, they get lucky because we have LA's a 1-hour flight. So that's also usually a big pocket for Napa wineries. But you look in Oregon, it's 90 miles. There are consumers that want to buy our wine in Minnesota, in Ohio, in Baltimore, all over, that we're not talking to, and they don't have either the economic means or the time to get on an airplane to fly here for a customer acquisition model. And we've not developed the discipline to learn how to talk to them in those markets or how to convince them to buy our product.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's an element of wanting to taste first too, right? I mean, with any food and beverage product, taste wins, right? Taste is number one driver, and so people are significantly more likely to purchase when they have tasted it or they can taste it, right?
Right. Well,
So
liquid to lips is key on that for
Yeah.
sure. But I mean, let's also remember we've had a huge premiumization in the wine industry. So you also have to look at it through the consumer lens of risk aversion. It's the same way we're looking at it. So every dollar above $20 a bottle, or depending on your economic means, it could be lower or higher. But like there's a threshold, every dollar above that becomes higher and higher risk of, am I getting something good in the bottle?
Right.
And when you start to get like $40, $50, $60 bottles of wine that has a score that's just like everybody else's,
Mm-hmm.
what is that compelling thing for me to put the liquid on the lips to celebrate that, or to buy that taste unseen, sight unseen, discount unseen? It's a hard decision path.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and let's also not forget that in wine, substitution cost is zero for any product, for all of, you go to Self, it doesn't have your Chardonnay. There's 5 there of either better, worse within a margin, or equal within a margin. That's kind of, every product, every single wine.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Difficult industry. And we'll talk more a little bit later too. I've got some questions for you about the industry and, sort of where we are now and what the immediate future might look like based on your expertise. But let's pick up where we sort of left off there in your trajectory. So it's 2014. You're like, this is crazy. I'm done with wine. I'm fatigued. I'm tired. I want nothing to do with it. You're obviously back in the wine industry now. So what happened between 2014 and now?
So I ran the tech department of W2O. They got invested by private equity, and they divested of all their software. That restaurant middleware bought it. I had high hopes. They had 10,000 restaurants under them. I'm like, great, we can use the software that they've sold to them to do that. Just it wasn't a good match for me. So I came back home, and then I was in that really interesting phenomenon, which is, I am a wine tech CEO or an Outbev tech CEO. How many Outbev companies are there to take over, to manage, to lead on the planet? I have now painted myself into a very small executive category. And so I joined the board of directors of an analytics software called Mabray because at Vintank, I'd done this social media listening, and we sold, I think it was like $2.5 million worth of analytics. Some very cool stories about using social to do brand building. And so they knew that. They brought me on the board, and the CEO had a terrible failure to launch. The investors sat me in the driver's seat and said, turn it around and fix it. I don't know why I said yes, but I did. I felt obligated. And pretty quickly, I was like, man, I'm right back to selling software to wineries. And even worse, I'm selling analytics software to wineries. I don't want this on my tombstone.
Which is not critically important to their function, No.
It was enterprise. So we swept up most of the enterprise accounts pretty quickly. During that period of time, Wine Search, we were buying data from like Vivino and Delectable and a bunch of people, and finding that they're either a mile wide and an inch deep, or an inch wide and a mile deep. And so those are where do you generate revenue from that? So they were undependable revenue sources to use them as data, unlike Twitter and Instagram, those data have been closed down from GDPR. So like we pivoted into the winery's own data, did some really cool innovation. But at that time, Wine Searcher came for sale. I was like, I told the board, look, I'm not going to my tombstone with wine analytics, Paul Mabray, CEO on that. So let's make a pivot to buy that. And we raised $34 million from private equity, came with the publishers, and despite all the challenges, and came with the publishers clearing check to those guys. And it was right when COVID hit, and they walked from the table. I was so upset. And then during that time, I was like, wait a second, everyone hunkered down during COVID. I came back to the board. I said, guys, I cannot believe I'm saying this. I never would say build a brand new consumer platform, but I think we should build a consumer platform because the winery, everyone's awake finally. This laggard industry has been forced. Yeah. And even if 80% of them are seed, we still have 20% as a revenue generating piece that will be a good part of the market. And we founded Pix Wine, which was supposed to be if a vino and wine searcher had a smart, handsome baby. It's my one failure that I have in my career. And it was successful in so many ways. We went very fast. We were within 14 months, we had the second largest selection wine. We were competing with Wine Searcher. Within, 15 months, we had $750,000 in ARR. When 16 months, we were the number one. We had more products than they did, but it's hard to build a search engine that speed and that time. But what's harder is to convince venture capitalists to give you money, right? And we had a great cadre of amazing investors. They're still amazing owners of my new company as well. And they'd all blessed me as like kind of the wine industry's who they. So I felt very obligated. And as we were running out of money, I was trying to raise the capital. We had a lead investor. He said, if someone just matches me or, he does even half, I'm in twice. And we were meeting with 3 of the wholesalers, and one of them called on August 9th and said, look, we like those guys, but they're too embryonic. We're out. And it set off a chain reaction. And in 6 days, I went from hero to zero because the other 2, I had 6 days to get a yes from the other 2. Yep. If not, that the lead investor is out. So any bridge funding, I could no longer use the bridge funding. So all the bridge funding was locked. Yep. And it was a terrible like Icarus moment. Like I flew to Coast of the Sun and we were laying everyone off on the 15th of August, including myself. I'm in the board meeting crying. Yeah. And then I had to go around to all those famous winery guys and say, look, I'm sorry I lost your money. It's a road of contrition. It was a brutal thing. A couple of them said, look, we think you made it through out the baby with the bathwater. Could you make it work with a small team? I tried to bring a small team together and we ran it for a while. And then finally, a couple of the board members came to me and said, look, Paul, you're killing yourself. You need to pull the plug. You need to let yourself go. And that was a hard time. It was like a really, I had to kind of take a couple of years off. I was really, you give it all, you laid it on the field. And, I was in the San Francisco Chronicle multiple times around and everyone wanted to make up their impression of what Pix was instead of what it actually was. They all wanted to create their own reality. So that was like endless barrage of both good and bad. And so I took 2 years off and sat on some great boards. I was really enjoying that time. And then as I was starting to get back in the mix, I was like, what do I want to do? I started kicking the tires at most of the big companies because there's not a lot of them out there. And I had a lot of entrepreneurs or venture capital people or, others saying, hey, we'd like you to start a wine media company. We'd like you to start a flash sale site. And that's when I started Transforming Wine, my Substack. Again, I wrote it back up because I'm like, let me share why this model doesn't work. Let me leave these breadcrumbs for the next person so that, this is why there'll never be an Amazon of wine. This is why there'll never, these are the constraints that are actually macro and micro.
That was the learnings that you had
for decades. Yeah, for decades of learning.
Work. Yeah. And I think also I want to reflect back to you one of the things I'm hearing as well, which is you were miserable, right? And that your team, your board, the people that you were working with were seeing like, you gotta just call it. And then you took the time to truly ask yourself and think about what do I actually want to do? And so that is what I assume led to Pour Now.
Yeah. So it was really, I was in this moment of like, I don't want to do another entrepreneur. I was, interviewing to see if I want to be CEO of a wine or take over one of the other properties. Because if you look at wine tech out there, they're flailing. There is no dragon or unicorn, depending on which definition. There's no big winner. I think that the most likely big winner we'll see as a unicorn will be Provi that's earned its way there. I mean, I know people say that, what was it? The delivery system. Drizzly was a unicorn, but it wasn't. It was not doing great before, Uber picked, or, it was a perfect timing structure during
Mm-hmm.
COVID.
Yes.
So who's going to build a model that's a unicorn? What model gets to unicorn status or dragon status? What model solves a real problem? And that's what I look at, is like, what's a real problem? And so I was writing, checking around. Again, I'm a AlkBev tech CEO. It's a very rarefied air, right? And you don't fit in any real world. A winery person sees you as a tech guy, tech guy sees you as a winery guy. It's a very strange, you know. So again, writing through all those models was cathartic for me, also to really kind of demonstrate what was working and just to drive some health. And someone came to me with a crazy idea that I thought was insane. And I said, the Vivino for whiskey doesn't make any sense to me. I'm out really quickly. And they asked me what gets big, what would inspire me. And I gave them 5 models that were solving real problems. And they came back and said, we really like this model. Can you do it? And so
those models were essentially opportunities or ways or structures or foundations to as you mentioned,
correct.
solve real problems in the industry.
Yeah. I only saw 5 as places that you can get to that unicorn status or that dragon status, depending on how you call it. And they had to solve it. And it couldn't just solve it for wine. It had to solve it for all of Bev. And I also philosophically, and I'm really philosophically against this whole notion, the VCs really lean into this thing around marketplaces. They want you to take a slice of the pie. And I believe fundamentally that is not the right answer. You're just a parasite into the part. So how do you reinsert value into the market is really what I would do. So one of the 5 was chosen that they said, this one's really great. I took it to 3 big, wine and spirits companies. I said, what do you think? And they said, where do we sign? I'm like, okay. And then I had to go back to my wife and said, we're going again one more time. Let's see if we can do this. And yeah, that was a tough talk. So we're on month 14. This is month 15 right now of the company. We have over 400 brands.
So explain what it is. So it's pour now.
Oh, yeah.
What is it? What does it do?
So we're the final mile for a shopper, right? Our job is to help a shopper measurably buy from a retailer. So brands up until now, and I mean all AlkBev, whether it's RTD to spirits or wine, and we only do AlkBev, have marketed top of the funnel marketing. They're like their brand awareness. And outside of direct to consumer, they've been unable to create a purchase path that was measurable, that serviced the entire category. They had either funnel it through a very small select group of retailers, only benefiting a small subset. They would use tools that pointed to dots on a map. That had no consumer completion. And so that's what we did. So we're assimilating all of the retailers in the United States. We have 85% of the chains now. We'll have 85% of the independents by the end of May. And then we'll move into multiple markets into the UK, Canada, and Australia at the end of this year. It's really amazing that what we can show a brand, either from doing nothing, passive marketing, to actually organic marketing to paid marketing.
Right. Yeah. Because it really is, for anybody who's listening, who's not familiar with this concept, is that, even you refer to the dots on the map, and I chuckled a little bit because it's so common, so many of the CPGs that we work with, that's the only option, right? And that is difficult to manage, right? You're putting product zips into a spreadsheet that's populating those dots on a map. That software is expensive. And then once they have viewed the map and they're then going to purchase at the retailer, you lose that jump. You don't know if they actually converted, whereas in your software, they do. But you mentioned it's all AlkBev. I thought it was just wine, but you started with wine as a initial focus,
my career
right?
started with wine. That's the hardest challenge to solve, actually. And when you're looking at the internet of products, because it's the most complicated, right? The naming structure, the garbage in, garbage out that occurs at the retail level. And I mean, my wife is probably one of the worst offenders, not intentionally. So she runs a winery called Donham, and every year they put a different Chinese zodiac symbol on there. Year of the dog, year of the horse, year of the dragon. The product is exactly the same. It's the Donham Carnero Chardonnay, but the retailers insert the horse or and so
totally with the creative on the bottle, they're just pulling from all
of the stuff. They leave out a block of the vintage, or, or a block of the vineyard, or maybe, a sub appellation. So this is the mess that has to be cleaned. So that's the hardest mess. That's why only 3 people have ever successfully come at Wine Searcher, and 4 now. So it was Hicks with us, Cellar Tracker, and Wine Searcher. But even what Vivino does, they're doing label recognition, which is kind of a pattern. They're not cleaning up the data. It's one pattern that if it matches or it doesn't match, right? So we're dealing with this garbage data that we have to normalize. It's really hard. It's a hard job.
Yes, it is. And so with your kind of your launch trajectory, your strategy for how you intend to continue, you've started already, but continue Pour Now and see its growth path. You have started with wine as the most difficult, or is it all Alc Bev?
We have all Alc Bev. All Alc Bev. We assimilate the alcohol beverage retailer, whether it's through a partnership or a myriad of different ways, and then that inventory is now how we help the Alc Bev companies. And it's not just Alc Bev companies; it's publications. It's like we're a portal that lets them measure attribution. So if you're a rating site and you want to send traffic through us, so that you want to see how well you're generating sales at middle of the funnel, top of the funnel or bottom of the funnel from your reviews. If you're a publication that you want to help people know where to buy the product and don't want to send it through someone who's taking a tax, a middleman. I'm really against the Instacart taxes. Marketplaces eat markets. I have an article that I write about that, which is brutal. And all these brands driving through Instacart are hurting themselves. Actually, they're hurting the market. They're hurting the retailers. And even worse, they're delivering free customers for Instacart to sell to their competitors or sell back to them at a premium. It's almost madness in some ways, right?
Yeah, and so let's get into that, because I want listeners to understand this path, right? And what this lack of attribution that is common in the industry, that problem that you're solving, right? So as a marketer, what is often happening is that, ABC company wants to market their product and then wants to be able to ideally track lift. And so we can track lift if we're, doing a campaign just at a select retailer and we're doing some zips instead of other zips. And then we're analyzing all of that data, layering it on top of each other. And then, using that as our assumptions.
Correlation instead of causation, right?
Right, exactly. Whereas what your platform will allow a middleman that doesn't take a percentage, essentially, right? Like you're sort of, I'm using heavy quotes for anybody who can't see me, like using that middleman, because typically the middleman wants their pennies.
That's right.
And you're allowing that sale data to be tracked all the way through, so we know exactly where the purchase was made. So if you, Mr. Middleman, are not taking a penny, help people understand where that like how is Pour Now making money if it's not in that transactional cost in the middle?
Yeah, we are getting a subscription fee for these kind of interstitial pages, these marketing pages that they're paying us to clean up and use. And
so like landing pages that have buttons for where people can purchase that track that data.
Yeah, and think of it like an Amazon A+ store, but an infinite amount of Amazon A+ stores. So an Amazon A+ store that has only one product, or maybe an Amazon A+ store that's painted for the Boston Celtics and that's a campaign, or an Amazon A+ store that has a score that's to them, and they can use those different things for their different marketing functions. So there are our consumer site has endless pages, and they're painting almost like a meta ads on top of us, right? And this endless structure. So it's kind of cool that way.
And I want people to also understand how that can be beneficial from a marketing perspective as well, right? Is that, let's say you are doing a dedicated A/B testing campaign and you want to see if the brand partnership with the Celtics is creating more of a lift than something that's touting the wine score, right? You can do all of that within the system and track attribution within these landing pages that are being created, and your cost does not change, right? So you can make these infinite pages. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things. I knew I wanted to have you on the podcast when you first demoed this for me, when you were still in stealth mode, which I think was like 6 or 8 months ago. I just remember asking so many questions and being amazed at this problem that you were solving, and hearing your backstory leading up to all of this too makes sense of why you were so critical, right, about how this was built and what it was and what problem it was solving. Based on that, you really wanted it to be worth your energy.
Yeah. And it has to be worth touching enough brands and enough retailers to unlock value. I mean, at our current pace, if we continue it up, we'll be driving more Outbev sales than Instacart by the end of the year.
And that's incredible. And so we were chatting before hitting the record button here. Talk about some of the traction that you've gained. Can you disclose some of the partners that you signed?
Yeah. So most of the big logos are on us now. So like Treasury Wine Estates, Boisset, O'Neill, Latitude, Marquis Maison and Domain, Conche Toro USA, Silver Oak. I'm sitting across the street from Trefethen right now. There's so many. We're just adding brands all the time. Tequila Zarpato. It's been such a wonderful experience, honestly, and to see the differences and learn and be able to add value. And even the belief structure that we have in our system that, like, no matter what, at least use our free version. Don't use the map anymore. Don't use this. Just take our free version with 2 listings so you can go and do a better job of attribution and make a healthier marketplace. Don't run it through a middleman like an Instacart or a DoorDash. Because make your retailers healthier so that they are able to buy more of your product. And they can, it's a very different narrative and story arc that we're building for the industry. And it's been interesting to see, get people to learn that, because people don't realize how funneling through marketplaces, doesn't help them. Or they think the producer enabled sales for the spirit side, like the DTC providers. You don't need to be one or the other. If you have brands in market, you have to help support them in market. You shouldn't be one of those. You should be
drive velocity. Yes.
Channel agnostic is key. And also I'm a DTC guy down to my DNA. Don't always force everyone down a DTC channel. Let them make a choice, because the sale's the sale, especially now.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to understand like what that looks like, right, on your platform. And so I can, as the brand owner, as the marketing partner, build a landing page within your system that will allow the consumer to find the best price, the one that's from the winery directly, the most local, right? Like, don't you have tags in there for people to be able to select?
Yeah, we see our fundamental job as the shoppers, where we are responsible for helping the shopper. And our job for the shopper is to make this easy and fast for them to make a decision, right? So we present the best choices with the most context for the fastest conversion. That's our mantra, right? And so those choices may change over time, but things like nearest, fastest, best price, pickup, delivery, so that you, in that buying modality, you have this moment in time that you just got inspired from purchase intent, whether it's an ad or an article, whether that's an influencer or a partnership. And you're like, I want to buy this. And then we present you these options. You're like, wow, I really want it today. I'm going to pick it up on my way home, and I need some chicken and some potatoes because I want to make a dinner for my wife. Or, I forgot your birthday. I'm willing to pay a premium to get it shipped or to get it delivered today because I want to make sure you get the champagne.
Right.
Or you know what? On cheapest chips, I'm willing to wait 3 weeks, and that's fine. I'll take the cheapest one on the slow train to Napa. Right.
Right. Yeah. And it's
we all have that.
Yes. Yeah. And what I love about the functionality that you've built into creating, how those pages get created too, is that it's a whole user experience, conundrum to get that much information onto one page in a way that also is optimized for conversion. And so that in and of itself is a behemoth of a task.
It's been a job. We have like almost 120 million offers in the database right now. We're approaching 30,000 retailers. We have 85% of the chains, and we'll have 85% of the independents by May, I think, at this point, that sell digitally, online, ecommerce, delivery or pickup, because those are the only paths to purchase. And it's interesting, we're butting up sometimes against some preconceived notions. Oh, you don't have all my retailers. And we don't have people that are offline. We don't have certain things, but I won't name the brand, but it's a big one. They're like, look, I'd rather have something that has 50% of the coverage and 100% of the conversion than 100% of the coverage and 0% of the conversion. I think it was my favorite line from them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So a lot of this has been on the positive, and I love the positives.
Thanks.
Tell me a little bit about some of the challenges.
Yeah, no, there's all kinds of challenges. I mean, I think some of the challenges that we found around this and this is a wine industry problem generally. You didn't have anything yesterday, but you want perfect tomorrow, right? There's that jump from like, and so like just using the retail locator dots on a map, that is
Yeah.
a zero benefit, zero value tool. No consumer uses it. You have no attribution. It's a waste of money and energy. But some people will hang on to it like another one is, oh, you don't have restaurants. And my joke is, and so there's that pushback is really funny. I'm like, I will pay you $1,000 today. I'll Venmo you right now if you can show me 5 consumers that used your retail locator, pick their dinner based upon your spirit,
right,
or your wine. It's ridiculous. It's not the way it works. No one does that.
Yep.
They're like, oh, I want this wine, so now I'm going to go have hot pot because they carry my. That's not the choice. So those things are really interesting, institutionalized thinking that's actually not consumer centric. I'd rather have something that's non-transactional that doesn't do the job than something that is transactional and does most of the job, right? That's why that saying I love so much. But the reverse is a real painful experience.
And your job too, as Mr. Accidental Entrepreneur, is to be able to take in those customer requests or those, why doesn't it do this, or and know whether to take them to heart or not, right? And vet them. Is this something that I want to explore more? Is it, well, that's not how humans behave. I don't need to worry about that. Neither do you.
That's a great example. So like many times, one of the most probably conflict-oriented discussions has been about the map. Do we want to build a map with dots on it? I said, we are eroding the value of a shopping experience that we're creating. We'd rather find a way to onboard retailers to get better, faster ways to get them online, even if it's the most simplest thing or for a few of their products, than to go backwards. And so that's, to your point, that has been a very dynamic, vocal discussion within the organization. Because I'm adamant about it. There's a clear, there's holding the line. What's the job to be done? The job to be done is the consumer to buy. That's the job to be done. And making sure that we can get them there measurably. The map does not provide that, as an example.
Yeah. And also, I think, no, go ahead.
Yeah. And funneling it through things like marketplaces doesn't get them either too. That's again, we've been requested to add marketplaces. And I said, I'm adamant against that as well. It's like, we're not creating health in the industry if we just put this there, because they will win too many placements of that. They're not an actual retailer. They are sitting on top of your actual customers. Yeah,
such a great point. That's a really great point. I'm inspired by what you mentioned too, with the idea of ForNow's job is to measure attribution and make it easy for the consumer to convert, right? And be able to track that all the way through. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that's coming from the brand owner.
No, like I said, publications, it can come from our site as well. We are a consumer site first and foremost. That's what we are. We just get paid by the brands because they have this pent up energy that they need to unlock. And it's our job to support that. We're doing work with publications as well. We're doing work with business development partners. We just looked at a portal today that has, is doing all kinds of, content. Like they're inspiring purchase intent. Our job is the final mile, measurable final mile. That's our job.
Yeah.
And that makes it easy.
And publications you mentioned, I love that idea. I'm also thinking of, we do a fair amount in agritourism and economic development as fringe work, right? Like we're primarily focused in food bev ag, but there's a lot of that transcends, especially to economic development as major drivers of communities, right? And so I can see economic developers wanting to leverage or recommend or put in place tools like that can drive, their community, especially if they're a region that's known for some sort of alcohol. I live in the Finger Lakes. We're just named Best Wine Region of the Year by Wine Enthusiast. How cool would it be if there was a platform for all the products in the state or in the Finger Lakes region?
We can do all of that. That's the thing. We're the final mile. It's and like it's all of those things, right? Helping the Finger Lakes to be more sustainable, not just to the retailer, but helping them, have that reach that's not there, the ability to close that loop. And someone who's in, Ohio, right? They got inspired by the article,
right? Exactly.
That's
yeah, for sure.
Because we do all this work to inspire them to buy, and it's hard to get and it's a hard job, to be fair. It's a very hard job.
Yeah.
And especially when you get very long tail products that are in so DTC, but they have spot distribution, like of,
Mm-hmm.
less than 100 PODs, points of distribution. It gets harder and harder.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
and by the way, go on.
And every moment where somebody has an opportunity to forget or change their mind, they drop out of the funnel.
That's right. We want to make all of the OcBev properties, whatever they are, shoppable. That's measurable and shoppable. That's our job, and not be in the transaction ever. That's the core job. We just insert in a tremendous amount of health into the industry by doing so. And now wineries can be more sustainable because they're getting pull through from activities they're doing where the energy is just not being diffused. Those retailers are now receiving that energy in market, so they're more healthy to buy more product. It's a virtuous circle, and we're just a facilitator of organizing that in a good, compliant, legal way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you mentioned, I mean, that importance of the brand to push the velocity and being able to do it in a way that is proving value to those retail partners as well is critically important. I really hope that some future version of you, Paul, or even if it's a copycat that comes behind you, solves this problem for other CPG as well, because it's not just an elk bev problem.
No,
it's a much larger problem, but I also believe in the importance of solving for niche first. So I just hope you have copycats or, the next version of this company that does even more.
Yeah, spin off a division for sure. We're, it's interesting because we have the ability to do that for a lot of CPG, but like to be a successful entrepreneur, it's a part of it is a key about focus, right? And oftentimes entrepreneurs get distracted by all the opportunity because there's always all the opportunity. It's like, how do you maintain that till you get to a place of sustainability?
Yeah, absolutely. Last question for you. Let's talk a little bit about the future. What do you think? I mean, we've seen decline in consumption in alcohol for the last 10 plus years. Of course, that's going to bounce back. I'm a firm believer. Some of this is reports I've read and, studies I've dived into, and some of it is just my gut that the world is cyclical, and it'll all come back. But what are your thoughts about what the next 5 to 10 years holds for elk bev?
Well, we're taking the chin for the next few years. I have to be honest with you, and
I think you're right.
Depending on the different categories too. I mean, look, we're in a perfect storm of a lot of problems. Whether that is, look, the economic uncertainty that's happening. This is a luxury good product, and a lot of products are premiumized. So in the old days, they used to say, we drink when we're in good times, we drink when we're in bad times, but we drink cheaper when we're in bad times, right? And so a lot of products have moved out of the cheaper, and that's part of the problem, especially in wine. If you look at wine's problem, it's premiumization tied with economic means. Those are the two collision paths. And you'll see a lot of red herrings around anti-alc sentiment, health sentiment, GDPs, or whatever. All of these are factors. They're minor, but really the center of it for wine is premiumization versus the subsequent generations' economic development. Meaning that if you look at boomers, they made a bunch of money. They're hanging on to it. They're still drinking fine, but they're dying off on that one. You look at Gen X, this small generation. Economic means probably the last generation to slip through a pretty good time. And then the millennials are just beaten up with like so many economic headaches, whether it was the recession in 2008 to the pandemic, to rising college costs, to home. It is like the poor generation is really stunted in their generational wealth. And there is some thesis around what's called the silver wave. Unfortunately, as morbid as that is, where the boomers die and hand that money down to the millennials. There's a concept that may do a leap boost, but that bleeds backwards all the way through. So that's, if you think about it, they're missing that economic means. They've gotten later into their career growth. They're not in those places to spend to the luxury products. And I don't believe in demographics for anything except for how close you are to birth, how close you are to death, and where you are making money.
Yep.
And that's what that measures pretty clearly.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. But yes, I agree with you on all of that. It's the first time I've heard that concept of the boomers, sort of passing down to the next generation, and that will change the economic means of the
Maybe we'll see how well they
millennials.
did it. Yeah, see how well they did it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll see what they do with it, right? Like, not only how much did the boomers hold on to those investments, but also, what is that generation as a whole gonna do with it, which could probably be a whole other episode. But anyway, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for taking some time to tell us more about your journey. And we touched on many elements of the alc bev industry and what's so important about, many factors in it, and, as well as into what's happening in the future. So thank you for your expertise.
I really enjoyed coming. Thank you for having me. Honestly, it's great to have shown you the beginning and then to be here and keep showing the evolution. It's been fun, and I can't wait to show you the next version.
Yeah. We'll have to have you back on in a year, and you can, talk about how you're continuing to dominate. Thank you for listening to Spilled Salt. I'm your host, Maureen Ballatori. Spilled Salt is an Agency 29 production. Agency 29 is a brand building firm for food, beverage, and agriculture brands. Learn more at agency29.com. For more information about the podcast, visit spilledsaltpodcast.com. Use that website to send me questions or recommendations for future guests. I always love hearing from you. Spilled Salt is available anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.